welcome back to the Conspiracy Couple Podcast. I'm Marissa.
And I'm Ethan.
And today we have another very interesting topic to discuss with you guys. But before we get started, as always, make sure you're following us on our socials. Our Instagram, Conspiracy Couple, is where we post all of our updates for the show on when we're dropping a new episode. We also post pictures of ourselves occasionally, the conspiracy cats, Domino and Nova. And if you love to look at very beautiful cats, you should follow us because our girls are the cutest. You should also follow us on YouTube. If you are not currently watching us on YouTube,
I believe it's called subscribe on YouTube.
It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, but it's a different name. That's the official name on YouTube is subscribe.
Okay, well, you should subscribe to follow us on YouTube. It's the same thing. It makes sense. You subscribe to follow.
You don't subscribe to follow.
No, you do.
Anyway.
I subscribe to someone's podcast.
Shout out
to our boy Benjamin.
Benjamin, yes.
Hi, Benjamin.
Probably watching this
I
video.
know.
Shout out to you. You just, Benjamin, one of our, what are we calling our people who listen to us?
Conspiracy cats.
The conspiracy cats. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you knew you were a conspiracy cat, Benjamin, but you are.
You, Domino, and Nova.
Left some really kind comments on the last, 3 videos, I think, right? So just shout out to you, Benjamin. Thanks for watching. Shout out to everybody else watching as well. Leave a comment, and we will probably
shout you
out because it still surprises us when somebody's like, hey, I watched or listen to this show and I enjoy it. So
yeah.
Shout out to all you who do that. Comment if you do. We love that.
Yes.
Thank you, Benjamin, for all the nice things you said.
Yes, thank you, Benjamin.
And all of you out there who have nice things to say but haven't said them, thank you to you as well for thinking those things.
Another comment shout out that we should make is an update from our last video. So our last episode was on the Jersey Devil.
Yes.
And remember at the beginning, I was talking about the Lost Tape episode?
Oh, that's right.
And I was like, I have no idea why they were in the woods, but they were in the woods, and the mom went into labor when she saw the Jersey Devil. So my sister Jacqueline commented and said they were in the woods because they were looking for their dog.
Yes.
And that was a big point of confusion for you.
Yeah, I was wondering why a pregnant woman was in the woods.
Why a pregnant woman just runs off into the woods with her children.
It was strange.
So,
also, I'm drinking a Coca-Cola Starlight in honor of conspiracies. Space. Conspiracy.
That would be much better served for a space-themed conspiracy.
Well, I don't know the theories before we start. Also, we're way too small to get sponsored by Coke, but we should be. This is a non-branded Starlight soda.
Okay, actually, I have a question. For all of you people who have tried the Coke Starlight,
the non-branded Starlight?
What flavor is it? Because we
know what it is now. We figured it out.
No, we didn't.
No, we didn't. But we have thoughts.
So
we have theories.
We have theories about what we think the Coke flavor is. And let us know what you guys think the Coca-Cola Starlight flavor is, because we have done actual science experiments, blind taste tests to try and discern the flavor.
Maybe that kind of stuff would be something that people would be interested on for Patreon content.
Oh.
We are thinking about starting a Patreon, and if you would be interested in some extra content and wouldn't mind, paying $5 a month, I think is the usual base one. Probably wouldn't charge more than that.
No.
But for some extra content, let us know. We might start a Patreon at some point.
And maybe you'll get a watch us taste test Cokes.
Well, I was some small little random theories that aren't big enough for an episode.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Stuff like that. Maybe mini theories.
Mini theories.
I know that this probably would be more of a side thing, not even a mini theory, but
mini theories. But it's just a fun question. Just want to know.
Yeah, there's lots of mini theories out there, and they're not long enough for episodes, so, maybe coming to a Patreon near you.
There's only one Patreon.
But our Patreon.
Maybe
there are many Patreons, because people have Patreon. Anyway.
I don't really know how
that was a very weird way of saying we're thinking of starting a Patreon.
It's just a thought.
Yeah. Just a thought.
It's
just a thought.
Anyways, anything else that you would like to share with our followers? Oh, also, just another shout out to subscribe on YouTube, because I'm wearing a very cool Golden Girls shirt right now. Yes. I'm wearing a very cool Golden Girls shirt. So, in honor of all of my favorite girls.
Is there such thing as a not cool Golden Girls shirt?
I'm sure you could figure it out, but you could probably make a shirt ugly enough that it wasn't a cool shirt.
That's true. You could do that.
But I mean, you got four women, like, stars on this shirt. So.
Are we talking about them today?
No, we're not talking about them. I just wore the shirt because I love the Golden Girls.
Okay. I'm wearing this shirt because it's soft.
Thank you.
It was free.
Yeah, thank you. He got a free shirt from
Dwight.
a church we do not attend.
He attended it one time.
Anyways.
It was soft and it's free. Or it was free and it's soft.
Yep. Anyways, anything else we need to get out of the way before we get into our theory?
I mean, we've said plenty that we didn't need to, so let's just get into it.
We're just going to get into the theory. So this week on the podcast, we are going to be discussing famed magician and escape artist Harry Houdini.
I've heard of him.
Okay, and the theory surrounding his death on Halloween 1926. So, Ethan, before we get started, as always, do you know anything surrounding the theories
about his death?
About his death.
Was he trapped in a box?
He was, but that wasn't anything to do with his death.
Oh. I think that was from Now You See Me.
That was a good movie.
I think that's Mark Ruffalo's dad or something was like a magician who got trapped in a box and died. And he like blamed someone or something. I don't know.
Okay, that movie, Now You See... Is it Now You See Me or Now You See It?
Now You See... It might be Now You See It.
That was a good movie. I really enjoyed that. My instant thought went to the DCOM about the magicians with Ali Mashaka.
I don't know.
I don't remember what it was called, but it's like...
I know that we've talked about this before because I'm pretty sure we've had this confusion before.
DCOM about magic.
Oh my gosh.
Now You See It. Okay, so that's the DCOM.
Wait, so...
Now You See It is the DCOM.
What is the one we're thinking of it?
Now You See Me.
Oh, so I was right. It is Now You See Me.
That movie was really good. We should watch that.
It's a good movie. I think the end doesn't actually make sense the more I think about it.
Truthfully, don't even remember it.
The more I've watched the ending and the more like the explanation of Mark Ruffalo's role, which I guess I just won't spoil, but it's a 2013 movie, so
you should have seen it.
You should have seen it by now.
Actually,
it's been almost 10 years.
No, okay, this is a magic week, so they should go out and watch Now You See Me and Now You See It.
Is Now You See It on Disney Plus?
I'm sure it is.
Where is Now You See Me?
It's on Hulu, I think.
While you're at it, watch Harry Potter. Too.
Yeah. That's a little more on the nose.
Or read it.
Read the whole series and watch all the movies before our next episode comes out.
Is there another movie about... Watch the Psych episode about... I guess they don't do magic, but they do... No. Anyway, the point the side tangent to the side tangent aside, my original side tangent was that it doesn't... The ending's kind of dumb. But the movie overall is good.
I honestly don't remember the ending, so I think that needs to be my homework this weekend.
Okay.
This has nothing to do with Harry Houdini, but...
Nothing we've said so far has had anything to do with Harry Houdini.
Did any of you guys watch Chris Angel Mind Freak when that show was on? Because I watched that show. I think my mom was a little concerned about me with how often my sister and I watched that show.
Anyway, back to your original question, which was, do I know anything? Clearly no. I just confused Harry Houdini with the plot of Now You See Me. So
yeah,
doing well.
So before we get into the details of his death, we are of course going to spend a lot of time talking about his life and career, and of course he did a lot. We aren't going to be able to discuss everything that he did and every trick he did and all of his acts. I'm sure
most people at least know who Harry Houdini is.
Yes.
Pretty famous person, at least in America.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I'm going to try and put as much as I can in, and there are some great documentaries and videos about him. So there's a lot of information that you guys have available to you. So he was born March 24th, 1874.
Almost birthday buddies.
Except you were not born in 1874.
Well, I meant like the day.
Oh, yeah.
Almost.
So he was born as Eric Weiss in Budapest, Hungary. And he was one of 7 children in his family. And his family was Jewish. And his father was a rabbi.
I'm guessing Houdini was not his original name.
I just said his original name.
Oh, I wasn't listening.
It's Eric Weiss.
I missed that.
I'm guessing his name was not Harry Houdini. literally just said his name was.
I got distracted by the birthday thing.
Yeah, I know.
I wasn't paying attention.
Okay, so Eric Weiss,
Yeah.
the man who would become Harry Houdini, was one of 7 children, and his father was a rabbi, and they were...
You said this, yeah.
I did, yes. And they had a pretty poor
I heard some
upbringing.
of what you
You
said.
heard some of what I said. I just wasn't
not
sure.
his name. Just not his name.
His family was fairly poor when he was a child, and apparently he always had this drive to be really successful. So when he was a child, him and his family moved from Hungary to Appleton, Wisconsin. Quite a move. And at the age of 13, him and his father moved from Wisconsin to New York.
Just him and his father?
So basically, his dad and him were going to go before everyone else, and his dad was going to get a job, and he worked some little jobs until the rest of the family came. And one of his jobs while he was in New York was working as a trapeze artist in the circus.
That's a job.
Yeah. So, you think of like a 13-year-old summer job, like maybe he was like working at the bakery,
classic 13-year-old
or
summer job.
Yeah, he was a trapeze artist.
Yeah. When I was, I don't think I was 13, but my first unofficial job was I worked baseball games, and I like cleaned the fields and did different score kept and stuff like that, and it was like not official because we were too young to obviously work.
Yeah.
But we were like paid.
Oh, okay.
And it was kind of like
Under the table.
So they didn't have to pay taxes.
Oh, my first job was a babysitter. That's like what every teenage girl's first job is.
Oh, I guess technically my first job was dog sitting. I forgot about that. I did that a lot.
You did, yes. So he was a trapeze artist, and he got into this, like, the circus world, the world of performing. So now we're going to jump up to 1893. So at this time, this is when he marries his wife, who was another performer, and her name was Wilhelmina Beatrice Renner.
Wilhelmina?
Mm-hmm.
Don't see a lot of those anymore.
No.
You don't see a lot of any of those names anymore.
No.
Wilhelmina, Beatrice. I mean, Renner, I don't know.
It's her
last
name.
names or whatever. There's probably lots of Renners. But
Jeremy
Wilhelmina...
Renner?
Yeah. I
Well,
think
it's
it's
spelled
spelled differently, yeah.
But...
Wilhelmina and Beatrice. Not a lot of those.
but she went by the name
should bring
Bess.
it back. Wilhelmina Barkey.
No.
Next cat.
We'll think about it. But she went by the name Bess. And when they got married, then she went by the name Bess Houdini, of course.
Is Wilma like from like Scooby-Doo? Is that short for Wilhelmina?
Welma?
Yeah.
You mean Velma?
Oh.
You mean
Yikes. I'm off to a bad start.
Anyways.
I was so confident it was
Velma. Velma's like one of my favorite characters.
I'm gonna be quiet for a while.
Yeah, okay. So Bess became his assistant, and she was like his stage assistant in all of his acts when they were touring. And in 1894, he began his career as a magician, illusionist, and changed his name to Harry Houdini. And his name came from a mixture of a play on his childhood nickname, Airy, and a nod to another famous magician who was a man named John Eugene Robert Houdin. So initially, he wasn't super successful with his magic career, but what did get him more attention was his ability to escape from handcuffs. So we'll talk about this more, but he really became known as being a great escape artist. So in 1899, his career took off after he was discovered by entertainment manager Martin Beck, who saw him do a trick where Houdini escaped from a pair of handcuffs and was instantly interested in his talent. And Beck took his career to the next level by booking him in vaudeville venues and even arranging a European tour for him. So you might be asking, Marissa, what is vaudeville? So vaudeville is a term used to describe a style of show that began in the 1880s, and it was kind of like a variety show. So usually it would have about 9 to 12 acts, and each of those acts would be performed in each show as they toured. And some of these would include comedians, dancers, circus performers, singers, burlesque dancers. So the idea was that every person in the family had something that they were interested in. And they even included motion pictures over the years when those started to come around. And Houdini became incredibly successful with his shows and eventually became the highest paid vaudeville performer in American history. And his shows involved these big escapes where he would start off with like the handcuff escapes. And one time he had the police search him, lock him up, and lock him in a jail cell. And he escaped from the jail cell. And he also became known for performing other performers' tricks, but making them bigger and better and like upstaging them. Of course, every time he did a trick, he had to up the stakes after each one, and all of his tricks became more and more dangerous over time. So some of these included escaping from straitjackets, escaping from tanks filled with water, escaping from crates that had been nailed shut, and as well as jumping off of bridges while in handcuffs and having his legs bound. He became, like, one of his famous ones was, like, the milk crate, and he filled up this milk crate with water, and he got inside of it, and he escaped. He even almost died from suffocation while performing a trick in 1915 that involved him being shackled and buried under 6 feet of dirt. And he was incredibly strong. It was like a metal milk crate. He was incredibly strong.
I'm looking up what a milk crate looks like because I wasn't sure.
So like a milk jug, kind of.
What? A milk jug?
Like a big one, obviously. Like, these are all modern day ones. Anyways, it's not important, Ethan.
I did it quietly.
So, he was very strong, like, physically, and he had this really good ability to pick locks and get out of situations, but he also kept all of his tricks completely a secret. He would not tell anyone how he did them. He refused to patent his tricks, because if he patented his tricks, he'd have to give a detailed explanation for how he did them. So all of his tricks were like completely secret. And in 1912, he debuted the most famous of all of his tricks, which is called the Chinese water torture cell. And this trick involved him hanging upside down from his feet and being lowered into a glass cabinet full of water that was locked. So during the act, he was required to hold his breath for almost 3 minutes until he was able to escape. Wow. So pretty intense.
What does that have to do with China?
I don't know. It's just the name.
Interesting.
It's just the name, Ethan. So even though he was busy with his magic and his escape artist tricks, he also had other exploits like film and making movies and writing books. And he started his own production company and released movies that showcased his escapes. And he also wrote many books, with one of his books attempting to discount the tricks of the magician that he took his name from. Oh. So he's very talented, very, like, gifted.
Pretty arrogant.
Yeah. But he also, like, it seems like he has this kind of desire to, like, upstage people and, like, show off why he's the best. Yes.
And to be the best, that means you have to tear other people down. Which is stupid.
He wanted to be the best. And he was the best. But he wanted to cement that.
You can be the best without other people being bad.
That is a great lesson, Ethan. That is a really good lesson.
Any kids listening, that was for you.
You can be the best without other people being bad. Anyways, I'm going to keep going.
Wow, okay.
He also had some really famous connections to the world of the occult and spiritualism. Most notably, his criticism for practitioners. So this is going to be something that's really important. It's going to play in. So he was known for speaking out against people who claimed to be spiritualists and had been a very vocal skeptic of members and practitioners of the occult. And he had a huge number of enemies that he gained as a result of these crusades. So I did some research into spiritualism because I feel like spiritualism is a very, like, broad sounding term. But basically it was a religious movement that gained a lot of popularity in, like, the 1800s to the 1900s, early 1900s. And the basic idea behind spiritualism is that people can communicate with people after they have died, typically through mediums or seances.
Oh, okay.
So they would meet in followers' homes or do lectures where they would attempt to communicate with the dead. And really, like, they would put on these shows and they would say, like, if you're here, bang on the wall or bang on the table. And so the basic idea is... Yes. The basic idea is talking to the dead. And there were probably a lot of reasons for the popularity of the spiritualism movement during the 1800s. One, society and technology were changing and becoming much more modern, much more quickly. So there was the Industrial Revolution. There was a lot going on there. There was a lot of immigration as well of people with different religious beliefs. A lot of people who were living in the area had been traditionally Catholic or Protestant. And so we see a lot more diversity in their religious beliefs. And then this is also a time where we have a lot of death. So people were feeling as though they needed more after someone had died that they weren't getting from their church or their religion. Specifically, parents who experienced the loss of a child. And this is still the time when the infant mortality rate and the child mortality rate was really high. And when the movement reached its peak popularity in the 1920s, the world had just ended World War I and the Spanish influenza epidemic. So there had been tens of millions of people that had died in the world just in the last decade. And so there was a lot of death, and people were wanting to know that there was more after death, and they could talk to these people. And this was also the time where we see photographs for the first time, and people are getting pictures where they see something kind of in the scene, or what is that? They think it's a ghost. So there's a lot of things about why, like the spiritualism movement, but basically the idea is you can talk to the dead.
Yeah.
So the question is, why was he such a big skeptic? So he never claimed to be like a magician. He is called a magician because he kind of falls into that category. I think a better word is like escape artist.
Yeah.
But he never claimed to be a magician. He never claimed to have magic or any like supernatural abilities. He always called himself an illusionist. And so that was his thing, was like, I don't want to attribute my talent to anything other than my hard work.
Very like, he's interesting.
Yeah, he's like, I don't want people to think that I did this because of a talent, like a supernatural ability. Right. And he also, the interesting thing was he was actually really, really good friends with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who was the author of the Sherlock Holmes books.
Yeah.
And Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was very into this movement, the spiritual movement, and he believed that Houdini had supernatural abilities.
Interesting.
Which is interesting. He was a huge skeptic and they're really good friends. And he also would get really mad and enraged by the people who became famous for what he thought was like pretending to speak to the dead and taking advantage of people who were grieving. And he wanted to expose them as frauds. So him and his wife Bess had actually tried to contact the dead a few times for research purposes. So they would go to the local cemetery and they would look up the names of the people and research the people there, and they would try to contact them. Of course, they were unsuccessful every time, and they just said it was pretty much nonsensical. It was not at all a thing.
Because I can't do it, that means it's not real.
Right. So in 1913, we hit like the turning point. So in 1913, he's in Sweden performing, and his mother passes away. So this was incredibly difficult for him, and he was extremely, extremely close to his mother. One of the videos I watched said that he was so overcome with emotion, he fainted and just started weeping uncontrollably. Because he had always described himself as being like a mother's boy or a mama's boy, and he was very close to her. And so after she died, he sought out a medium who could speak with her because he really wanted to talk to her one more time. And he was unsuccessful, and so this further enforced his skepticism.
Yeah.
So he actually went to a seance that was put on by Doyle's wife. And a medium, basically they're at the seance, and the medium said that his mother had contacted them within like the first 5 minutes of the seance. And she wrote out about 15 pages of the message that his mother supposedly wanted to relay to them.
15?
15 pages. So, like 5-10 minutes in, the medium says, your mother's coming through. She's banging on the table, banging on the walls. Your mother's coming through, and she has a message for you. She starts writing out the pages. And instantly, Houdini is pissed. He is pissed. But he sat there for the whole duration of the seance, didn't say a word, thanked the Doyles for hosting him, and then left.
Why was he mad?
He was mad because the writings and the message that the medium had given from his mom were in English. And his mom did not know how to speak English. And so he just sat there and was like, this is BS. And he was mad. Obviously, I mean, this is his mom. He wants to talk to his mom.
Right.
And she's like, I'm talking to your mom. And he's like, my mom can't even speak English. So that was like the last straw for him.
Yeah. I get it.
It's interesting that him and Doyle were still friends after that.
I mean, Doyle meant well.
Imagine, like, going to this thing. I mean, I don't know how long this was, but he, within the first 5 minutes, was mad. He sat there the whole time and didn't say anything.
That's what I would do.
You would? Like, that is what you would do.
Yeah. I would just sit there, be angry, not say anything, and then leave.
What do you think I would do?
Leave earlier?
I would probably storm out in the middle and be like, also, you're full of it.
And then you would never talk to any of them ever again.
No, I would not.
You and Sir Arthur Doyle. I don't know. Because Doyle kind of, like, that's not like Doyle.
It's not his fault.
Right.
Like, they were trying to be nice.
He's trying to console his friend.
And I just think...
it did not go well.
It didn't go well. She's like, your mom is speaking. And everyone's like, oh my gosh. And he's like, oh, this is...
Doyle, can you imagine Doyle the whole time? He's just like, wow, this is incredible. I'm so glad this is going so well. He leaves and he's like, that was amazing.
Says, like, thank
what an
you for
incredible
having me.
night. And then later finds out, oh.
Yikes.
Dang.
Yikes.
Sorry.
Yeah. So at this time, there was this very famous medium, and her name was Mina Crandon. She also went by the name Marjorie. So she was really, really famous. And he actually went to 2 of her seances, and he just would go and he would watch them and he would just like observe.
Okay.
And after going to these seances, he actually figured out how she was making it look like she could commune with the dead. And he wrote down all of her tricks and he performed them to his audience to kind of like make fun of her.
Dang.
Mm-hmm. He really did not like mediums.
No.
I mean,
He's a smart dude.
He is very intelligent.
Yeah.
Very intelligent, very talented. Okay, but
That's like the ultimate petty move.
pettiness in me would do the same thing.
I don't think you'd be able to.
I'm not that smart, but I would want to do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
If I was trying to talk to my mom, my best friend, after her passing, and I was like, this is a mockery, like if I felt the way he felt, I would want to expose him too.
Yeah. He devoted like a decent amount of his life to this. It's interesting.
Yes.
I had no idea.
Yeah. So remember that. Remember the spiritualism thing.
Oh boy.
So we've talked about his early career, some of the things he's famous for. We talked about his experience with the spiritualism movement. Now we come to the time leading up to his death. So we're going to start off just with, the date and time of his death. So his official cause of death is his death was caused by severe sepsis as a result of a ruptured appendix.
What's sepsis?
Sepsis is an infection of the blood.
I bet I wasn't the only one that didn't know that.
No, you definitely. Okay, we're going to have another Medicine with Marisa segment.
Let's go.
Because I often forget that not everyone has done 10 weeks of clinical rotations in a hospital and deals with sepsis all the time.
I don't think everybody has.
Yeah. That RD-to-be life right there.
Yeah.
Anyways. So, died from sepsis as a result of a ruptured appendix on October 31st, 1926. And at the time...
Is that like a common death back then? Like, did they know about getting your appendix removed? They did?
Yes. And we're going to talk about that more.
Okay.
So, at the time of his death, he was 52 years old. And his decline in health really started a few weeks prior to his death on October 11th. And he was performing his famous Chinese water torture cell trick at the time. So apparently he was struck in the leg by a piece of equipment, and that resulted in him having a fractured ankle.
Yeesh.
So his doctors recommended that he pause the tour and take some time to heal, but he
Right.
declined and continued on.
Oh boy.
So on October 22nd, he was in Montreal giving a speech at McGill University on the topic of spirit fraud. So after this talk, he invited some of the students from the university to join him in the dressing room to hang out and talk more about it. And this is when one of the students, a man named Jocelyn or J. Gordon Whitehead, I had never heard Jocelyn as a man's name until this.
Me neither.
So J. Gordon
I
Whitehead.
just think of Jocelyn from Schitt's Creek.
Yeah.
Jocelyn.
That was really good.
Thank you.
I need to get a shirt with all like the Rose family on it next.
Oh, that'd be good. Or just Moira.
Just Moira. Moira is
Iconic.
an icon. I can't wait till we have kids we can dress up as the Rose family.
But you don't have to wait.
Well, who would be David and Alexis?
Domino and Nova. Domino already dresses like David.
In black and white.
Yeah.
Anyways, so J. Gordon Whitehead. So, this is some background. Publicly, Houdini had claimed that he could withstand any punch to his stomach. And,
That's an
like, he
interesting
had done
claim.
that.
He's just like, punch me, I can take it. Is that like a part of his show?
Yeah. But
That's
people,
weird.
people just punch him. So, if you, like, look at pictures of him, he is very muscular.
Houdini is?
Yes.
Oh.
Like, he's very muscular. Very
Hold
strong,
on.
very muscular.
Looking it up. Houdini abs.
Houdini abs.
Houdini body. Let's go. I'm looking it up. I'm going to put a picture of it up right now. Yeah. You know, he's pretty... I wouldn't say he's jacked, but he's toned. For sure.
Especially, like, his upper body.
Yeah, no, he's lean. Definitely.
Mm-hmm. So, this was, like, a thing that he had said, like, I can withstand this.
Yeah.
So, J. Gordon Whitehead says, can you actually resist punches to the stomach? So, at the time of this question, Houdini is reclining on the couch with his leg up because his ankle was bothering him.
Right.
So, when he said, yes, I can, in fact, do this, Whitehead proceeded to just wail on him, punching him 4 times in the stomach without giving Houdini a chance to, like, prepare.
Right.
Or, like, brace himself, because, you know, he kind of, like, brace his
Jeez.
abs. So he says, yes, I can. Houdini's, like, laying on the couch with his ankle up, and he just starts punching him in the stomach. So he punched him 4 times before Houdini held up a hand to stop him, a look of pain evident on his face.
Jeez.
So after the incident, he brushes it off and continues on to Detroit to continue his tour. However, later that night, he began to complain of severe abdominal pain.
Yeah, you just got rocked in the stomach 4 times.
Yep. The next day, he also developed cold sweats, fatigue, and even a fever of 104. So apparently, at this point, a doctor diagnoses him with acute appendicitis and recommends that he pause the tour and go seek medical help.
Does he?
No. He declined and continued on with his scheduled show, as the theater had already sold over $15,000 worth of tickets. He reportedly said, quote, I'll do this show if it's my last.
Oh boy.
So,
Don't say things like
his
that.
last performance was October 24th, 1926 in Detroit, Michigan.
Was it that show?
It was that show. And he was apparently rushed to the hospital at the request of his wife, Bess, at the conclusion of his show, when he nearly collapsed from the pain. So some reports say that they had to put ice packs on him to control his fever and cool him down throughout the show. And others say that he passed out in the 3rd act.
Yeah.
So it's about, the show ends and Bess forces him to go to the hospital at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Now you may say, the man has appendicitis and his wife has to force him to go to the hospital. That's crazy.
Right.
I have worked in medicine for 5 years. That's more common than you think.
But also think about it, like, he is a man that has made his life off of doing what people think is impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Like, And he's got an ego. He's got some pride.
Yes.
So
He has made his life doing the impossible.
yeah, he definitely seems like the kind of guy who's like, no, I'm fine.
Yep.
I can take it.
And this is also the 1920s, and
he also has a broken ankle, by the way.
And he never did anything about that.
Yeah.
But men not getting medical treatment until their wives force them to is actually something that's more common than you would expect.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we had one person who like literally actually had appendicitis, and they were like, I don't know if I can come into work. If I can come to the doctor, I have work. And I was like, you have appendicitis. Like, I'm on the phone, like, let me talk to your wife, actually. Like,
yeah, right.
Like, I need to get through to you.
Anyway.
So when he gets to the hospital, he was immediately rushed into surgery, where his appendix was successfully removed. But by that point, his appendix had already ruptured. And the toxins from inside were slowly poisoning him. And at this time, antibiotics had still not been invented. So today, a ruptured appendix, we would give him a course of antibiotics.
Right.
They couldn't do that back then.
Yeah.
So he slowly got sicker. So he eventually died on October 31st, following 2 surgeries, the first one to remove the appendix and the second one to try and clear out the infection. And he died from severe sepsis and peritonitis, which is inflammation in the tissue of the abdomen. And his wife and 2 of his brothers were by his bedside. His last words were apparently, "I'm getting tired and I can't fight this anymore."
Oh, man.
And at the time, his doctor suspected that his appendix had ruptured as a result of Whitehead punching him, which is a case of what was called traumatic appendicitis. Now, this is something that was widely accepted during this time period, but studies show that it is actually exceptionally rare, if even possible.
Oh.
But at this time period, it was, he punched him and his appendix burst. So immediately after he died, papers began speculating that he was murdered.
By Whitehead?
By Whitehead or by something else.
Oh.
They did not think that he had died from appendicitis because it seemed like too common of a death for someone who had made their life doing the impossible.
He's a human, though.
Right. So, immediately after he dies, everyone thinks that he's been murdered. So now, we get to go into one of my favorite segments, Medicine with Marisa.
Let's go.
And we are going to be talking about the appendix and appendicitis. So the appendix is an organ that is located on the lower right side of the abdomen. You can see it's right here. Okay, lower right side. The exact function of the appendix is not known. There are speculations, a lot of people have different theories about what the appendix is in there for. My theory is that it is a joke played by God to make us worry and to make surgeons more money. Because really, the only time you hear about the appendix is if you have to get it taken out.
Why don't we just take it out?
Like when you're born?
Yeah. Or not, maybe not born, because it's surgery on a baby.
Why would you take it out if there's something wrong with it?
Because it could burst.
Okay.
And it doesn't serve any purpose.
A lot of people, it doesn't burst.
Do you have your appendix?
I do.
Me too. This is a 2 appendix podcast.
Usually people don't get their appendix taken out unless they have appendicitis.
Right, I know.
So I would not want to have surgery to remove an organ that's may or may not burst. And if it bursts, I'll just have a day surgery to get it out anyways.
But this is a 2 appendix podcast.
This is a 2 appendix podcast. So when a person has appendicitis, the appendix becomes inflamed and the person will start to experience pain in the area. And usually the pain becomes quite severe. So you think, oh, the person has a stomach ache. It's like very severe stomach pain.
Yes.
We had people in the clinic that would have appendicitis and they would rate their pain as like a 10 out of 10.
Yeah. I had friends who had it when they were like in elementary school and stuff, and they would just like fall on the floor like holding their side.
Yes. Yeah. And there will also often be nausea or vomiting and a fever. If you're into like medicine, usually the way the doctors will tell is if the person has these symptoms, they'll do like a blood draw and they'll feel if it feels inflamed, and the person's white blood cells will be like astronomically high because their body's fighting off an infection. So the treatment for appendicitis is to remove the appendix.
Yep.
And that solves the problem.
Let's go.
It's a pretty routine surgery nowadays. If the appendix is not removed, sometimes it can rupture, which then releases toxins and infection into the abdomen. And, of course, when the infection comes in, you have to get antibiotics, and surgery has to be performed at this time to remove the appendix and clean out the abdominal cavity. So, that's appendicitis.
Nice.
A moment from little Marissa, just a little insight into what I was like as a 5th grader. So I learned about the appendix in 5th grade, and I remember coming home from school in tears with my best friend Britta because we were so scared that our appendix was just randomly going to rupture, like, imminently. I thought that at any moment my appendix could burst and I would die. And I was so scared for like months and months and months after that. Like, I would just be sleeping and my appendix would burst and I would die. And my poor mom, this podcast is a Susan fan club because she has had to put up with a lot of my BS over the years. And Jacqueline can attest to that in the comments. Well,
it's my burden now.
I've healed a little bit since then. But
I think this podcast is also an Ethan fan club.
I guess. But she had to explain to me that your appendix, if you have appendicitis, you will know before your appendix bursts and you will probably have time to get treatment before you die.
Probably.
And she's like, you are not just going to be laying in bed and you will die from an appendix bursting. But I was like, I remember my mom had got a call from the school that me and Britta were like in the classroom crying. Oh my gosh. Because we were so scared our appendix was going to burst. So that's just a little insight into my psyche as a child.
Wow. Not much has changed.
Yeah. So Medicine with Marissa is now concluded.
Oh, good. I can pay attention now.
You were excited about it.
I was paying attention.
Okay, good. And
I pointed to where the appendix is.
Yes, thank you. I also think the reason, like you had said, there were all these theories was that he had made his life cheating death.
Right.
Like,
So
he had almost suffocated. He had, like,
Right.
been, like, submerged in water.
Almost in a weird way, I bet people were, like, wanting him to die doing one of his tricks.
I think that makes sense. Like, if he's gonna die, he should go out doing something, like, great, like, grand.
Yeah. Which is a sad way to think about things, but
And
people
they were
think
like,
that way.
Yeah. So now that we've talked about his death, we're going to talk about some of the theories surrounding what may have actually happened. So I think the biggest theory is that he was murdered as a result of his criticism of the spiritualism movement. So we talked about the fact that he was a huge skeptic of the movement and spent a lot of time trying to discredit them, and he was not planning on stopping anytime soon.
Right, yeah.
So a few months prior to his death, he actually testified before Congress to support a bill that would put very strict regulations and almost outlaw the practice of fortune telling in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
And a lot of people believe that this was what ultimately ended up getting him killed. So the question is how?
Right.
So he was notorious, him and his wife were notorious for not traveling with security. When they went places or when they traveled, even though he was incredibly famous and had some well-known enemies.
Right.
So supporters of this theory state that spiritualists had this history of poisoning their enemies to kill them. And that if they wanted to poison him, it wouldn't have been that difficult. That it would have been very easy for someone to have snuck into the hospital and poisoned Houdini while he's recovering from the operation to remove his appendix.
Interesting.
No autopsy was ever performed on his body after his death, and he was buried pretty shortly after his death. So, technically, an autopsy did not confirm that he died from appendicitis.
Right, but since he was in there being treated for appendicitis, they just, like, assumed this is what happened.
He was sick.
Right.
He was sick before he went into the hospital.
Because his appendix burst.
Because he had appendicitis and his appendix ruptured. And he had to have surgery to remove it, and he had to have surgery to try and get rid of the infection. However, if you follow this theory, the idea is that he had the surgery and it was successful, but that he actually died from poison after the fact.
Okay.
So remember how we talked about the incident with Mia?
Seems like it was unnecessary because he probably was going to die from the appendix anyway.
Well, I mean, if he would have recovered from the sepsis...
If... With no antibiotics.
But why not just go in and finish the job? It would have been so easy.
I guess.
He was already dying. He was already very ill.
I don't know if it would have been so easy. I mean, I know they didn't travel with security, but that doesn't mean you can't just walk into someone's hospital room and...
I mean, it's a little bit less strict on who can go into
Still.
the hospital than it is now.
I know, but I'm just saying.
So, there's that. So, remember how we talked about the Mina Crandon incident.
Right.
And how she had a lot of followers. So here, followers were enraged by his public shaming of her. In August of 1926, I wrote this down wrong, which is the year he passed away, one of her followers supposedly said, Houdini will be gone by Halloween.
Oh.
And he did end up passing away on Halloween of that year.
Sketch.
So it's not unheard of.
That they could have just wanted to kill him
because they were mad.
Yeah.
And if this person actually said that, then that's a little bit sketchy.
Yeah.
The next theory kind of is a little bit different, but kind of the same. So this is around J. Gordon Whitehead. Was he a hired hitman that was sent to kill
Literally,
Houdini?
hitman. Because he hit him.
He died, Ethan. That was so bad. That was good, but it was bad.
How is that bad?
Because it's just like a man died.
What do you think hitmen do?
I know. I don't know. It just sounded
I was
bad.
saying he was a literal hitman because he hit him.
That was actually... Okay, I'll give it to you.
Yeah.
I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you. So some people think that Whitehead was hired either by the spiritualist or another person who wanted him dead to punch him knowing that it would kill him.
But how do you know that?
Right. So skeptics...
How do you know his appendix is going to explode?
Right. Skeptics say there's really no evidence to connect him as the killer, and...
I mean, there is.
Traumatic appendicitis...
But it doesn't,
is
purposeful.
so rare. Yeah.
As I say, like, there's evidence to connect him to Houdini's death, just not, like, that it was intentional.
Right.
There's no evidence to suggest that it was, like, planned.
Right. But, like, traumatic appendicitis is very rare, but at the time, they all thought Whitehead punched him and he died.
I mean, he got punched 4 times in the stomach late, like, not that long after his appendix is breaking. Like, it does seem connected.
Mm-hmm. There's an interesting question in one of the videos that I watched that posed, like, so yes, like, we know that, like, probably punching someone's not going to, like, cause their appendix to burst. But what if their appendix is already not doing well and then they get punched?
Right.
Like, could that potentially...
Nova wants to listen.
I mean, she's so cute. So, like, that's an interesting question of, like, is that a possibility? But at the same time, Whitehead would have to know that he had appendicitis.
Right. Which he probably wouldn't have been able to know.
Like, the only people I knew were, like, the doctor and Bess.
Right.
Like, and Bess probably wasn't telling Whitehead.
Right.
Plus, Whitehead was a medical student. So, he should have known that if he wanted to murder someone, it wouldn't have been, like, a very efficient way to do it.
No.
So...
It just doesn't make sense. Like, I don't know. Hired to, like, punch him and hurt him? Maybe. Hired to kill him by punching him in the stomach? Doesn't make any sense.
Right. My thing is...
That's, like, the least effective way to kill somebody.
My thing is... Imagine. So, like, J. Gordon Whitehead has no idea that this is gonna, like, hurt him. Imagine being blamed for killing Harry Houdini.
Otherwise, this guy would probably not be remembered.
No, like, hi, are you about to fall asleep? She's so cute. Imagine, like, publicly being blamed for killing Harry Houdini.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Like, that probably ruined his life.
That's your legacy. You're the guy that punched Harry Houdini and made him get appendicitis.
And made him die. Like, that's, like, sad.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. So, interesting enough, Harry and Bess had made this promise to each other that whoever died first would try to communicate with the other via psychics or seance.
Why? Because they were so against it. Why?
Because they wanted to talk to each other. I think at the bottom line is you want to believe. Like, you want to believe that you can talk to people after they pass. Like, and they even came up with this code that they would know, like, okay, so they would know they weren't being duped. Right. So Bess actually had a seance every year for 10 years following his death in attempts to communicate with him. And she was never successful, apparently.
Dang.
But the Halloween Houdini seance is still done by some fans, even to today.
Do they know the secret code?
I don't think they know the secret code. I think it was just Harry and Bess. I mean, he was so secretive about so many things.
Wow.
So, Ethan, the last theory is the theory that Harry Houdini had appendicitis and he did not get it taken care of and he died of a ruptured appendix.
So the actual story?
Correct.
I thought you were going to say the last theory was that he didn't actually die.
No, he definitely died.
Death. Oh. What about aliens? Is there a way to get aliens involved?
Unless aliens give you appendicitis.
Who knows?
They could.
Maybe.
Ow.
Oh, what are you? Maybe Mr. Whitehead was an alien, and he had, like, you know, some special abilities, and his punch gave Houdini appendicitis. And you might be asking, why did the aliens want to kill Harry Houdini?
Why did the aliens want to kill Harry Houdini?
Because they don't like illusions. I don't know.
Why don't aliens like illusions?
That obviously doesn't make any sense.
I honestly stopped listening after you said Mr. Whitehead because my favorite teacher in high school was named Mr. Whitehead.
Anyway, we're moving on. What do I think? Did you ask that yet?
Yes, as we conclude, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it is a very, very unfortunate accident that J. Gordon Whitehead punched him 4 times, and that caused him to get appendicitis, and that sucks. And
so you think it was traumatic appendicitis?
It just seems like, I mean, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was just, like, very convenient or, like, coincidental timing, but it feels like he gets punched, he gets appendicitis. I mean, maybe it wasn't caused by the punch, but it feels like it probably was. I don't know.
Maybe he already had symptoms he wasn't paying attention to. Maybe.
He has obviously given... Either way, I think it was accidental or just medical, and it's very unfortunate. But there's nothing sinister to it, I don't think.
I also do not think that he was murdered. I think, though, that it could make sense. I mean, he had a lot of enemies, and he had, like... This was, like, a way of life for people, and these followers were very devoted. So him being so vocal and, like, wanting to, like, shame them and embarrass them and expose them, like, I can see how that would really piss people off and make them want to kill him. Yeah. The supposed quote, Harry Houdini will be gone by Halloween, that is very suspicious.
There's no way to prove that was actually said,
right,
though.
But that's suspicious, coupled with the fact that he died on Halloween. Yep. And I think the fact that he died on Halloween is also, like, lends itself to mystery. I think it's very confusing. Like, okay, when you see someone who's, like, famous and they're, like, known for being, like, larger than life and they're known for being, like, death-defying, and then they die of something so natural. Right. Like, that's kind of, like, mind-blowing. Yeah. You would never think that to happen. Right. I don't think he was murdered. I think that...
He was a human being.
I think that if he would not have died from appendicitis, he would have been murdered.
Yeah, potential.
Like, 100%. Yeah.
It's true.
He had a lot of...
He made some enemies, and he wasn't quiet about it.
I think it's possible. Like, it's possible that someone could have poisoned him in the hospital, but he was dying anyways.
Yeah.
I mean, he was already sick. He had appendicitis. It was diagnosed. He was dying.
Right.
So, anyways, let us know what you guys think. That was kind of like a very, like, quick, we're done. Bean's like,
I don't know if it was. I thought it was normal.
Bean's like, I'm ready to be done. Anyways, let us know what you guys think. Benjamin, do you think Harry Houdini was murdered? Let us know.
And everybody else, not just Benjamin. We're not just making videos solely for Benjamin.
I mean, even if we are, that's fine.
No, other people watch.
Other people watch. You're right. Anyways, all of you, let us know your thoughts. Do you think that Harry Houdini was murdered? Do you think that he just had appendicitis? Do you think that J. Gordon Whitehead punching him in the stomach caused his appendix to burst? I do not think it did, but you were thinking
I'm
maybe.
not a doctor.
You are definitely not. Anyways, let us know what you guys think. And thank you for tuning in as always. And we'll be back in 2 weeks. Hopefully, it's been very busy over here.
Bye.
Bye.